Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pivot, the interviews where we learn from our local businesses how they are adapting to the current COVID quarantine. My name is Ariane Olshansky, and my intention for these interviews is to create meaning in this uncertain time and to find the lesson, to offer inspiration by seeing and hearing how others are adapting, and to create community connection and let people know that they're not alone. And you are not alone. And today we are heading across the bay to Oakland to talk with Isaac Kos-Read, who is the founder and president of the Kos-Read Group, which is a communications, you're gonna say it better than I do, Isaac, so welcome, thank you for being here, and please talk to us about the Kos-Read Group.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity and for raising up these important issues at a time like this. Kos-Read Group, as you mentioned, is in the business of both communications and advocacy. So we have a business that is strategic communications, media relations, social media, crisis communications. And then we have a whole other business group, which is advocacy, lobbying, government affairs. It sort of takes the 2 decades of work that I've been doing in and around California politics and policy and really concentrates them on working with what I call civic-minded organizations that are seeking results that matter. Civic-minded organizations are those that realize they need partnership with government and community sort of across all sectors to be effective in what they want to do, and are really seeking results that matter, like better public policy, more funding for good projects, things that me and my team, we can really get behind and feel motivated by. I launched it in 2014 after I had wrapped up a service at the Port of Oakland. Did it for about 1.5 years and then got lured back into government one last time to go work for the Oakland Unified School District, where my daughter is a second grader at one of our great Oakland public schools. And then realized, no, I love being in the private sector. I love working with clients. I love having a consulting practice where I get to delve into a lot of different interesting issues and really go deep and try to impact my community in multiple ways. And so I relaunched in 2016 and things have been going really well.
Fantastic. Well, I'm happy to hear that, but I'm sure things have probably changed a little bit since the quarantine and since COVID-19 hit. How has your business changed since then?
Yeah, it's interesting. So kind of year by year, I had gone back and forth with whether or not I was going to be a solopreneur and partner with other solopreneurs, kind of bring in the right curated team per project. Even always wondering, should I go back in-house for one of my clients that I really believe in? And then I realized, no, it was actually over the last couple of years, my father passed away last year. And that he had a 2-year battle with cancer, living next door to us here in Oakland, right here on the lake. In fact, let me see if I can point to right there is where we live and where my office is and where my father lived next door. And thinking about his end of life and his legacy made me realize Kos-Read Group was going to be part of my legacy. And that part of that was going to be to build a team and help inspire and grow the next generation. And so I hired my first 2 employees a couple years ago and was going great. And then I realized, I'm going to need to expand even more. So I actually hired to expand, try to really bring in a diverse team with lots of interesting backgrounds from all across the Bay Area. And I launched the year with 4 new employees. I grew from 2 employees to 5 total because 1 left and had transitioned. So I had 4 new employees, was looking to grow, and then boom, this hits. Now, for the most part, I would say we have been somewhat lucky because in the midst of COVID, the 2 things that we do are super relevant, right? COVID is in part a communications challenge, like good information, how do we respond? How do we get good information? How do we respond to it? How do you communicate what you're doing in response to all that's going on? How do you work with all your stakeholders? So communications is, if anything, as critical as ever. Now it's hard because you have all these communications plans going for the year, campaigns that you might already be working on, and then suddenly you have to really reinvent almost everything. It's hard to just keep doing what you were doing before.
Right.
And then on the government affairs side, even though I'm very concentrated really in Oakland and in the Bay Area, although I have a background as a state and federal lobbyist, working with government is as critical as ever, because if anything, government always ends up being, no matter how much of a market society we think we are, is the backstop of everything. And right now we're realizing more and more we need government as a partner across all areas. Government has a huge role to play in COVID. Which businesses are going to stay open? Which businesses get to reopen? What are the rules when they reopen? For example, we did lose some business. We had 2 clients in the travel and tourism industry that instantaneously, the day the first shelter-in-place ordinance went into effect, they shut down, had to lay off a huge amount of their, basically all their workforce, and that whole industry has a long road to recovery. And in response to that, what am I going to say? No, you got to honor our contract. I was like, of course, we're in the relationship, we're all in the relationship business, but when you're in the relationship business, it's like it's all you have. Especially as a small business, we only have about our model is like between 10 and 20 clients. And we really have deep relationships with those clients. So, this is one that we'd had a huge success with. We've been in partnership with for over 2 years. So, of course, yeah, we understand you've got to cut back. And so we're not going to work together right now. But just this week, they reached back out because how the travel and tourism industry rebounds and regrows, they have a big stake in it, and they need to be at the table. Even though they might not have a lot of revenue coming in, they really do have to be at the table in those discussions. So we'll see. We've been, fingers crossed, knock on wood, okay so far. We've definitely not grown the way, I had hired to grow. But I also feel very committed to the people who I hired, that we're going to do our best to weather this together. I've not had to lay off anybody. I've not had to furlough anybody. We might not be looking at mid-year bonuses like I'd hoped. But so far we're doing pretty well. Despite the travel and tourism business that cut, and a couple others, that had us cut back. And the long-term situation, I don't know. There's tremendous uncertainty. We do a lot of work in the area of public education, and the whole future of what that looks like, and the future of online learning, online education, no one knows what it's going to look like. So again, we have that situation where the clients need to be involved in that discussion and need to be at the table and helping shape that. But if they don't have money, they don't have money.
Right, exactly. Well, thank you for saying all of that. That was a lot. And I understand, some of the dynamics of those different businesses and how they can't, like the travel business, for example, how it can't continue, but it does have to still be at the table to see how it can evolve into the future.
Yeah.
I know you have an amazing condominium, or I don't know what it is, amazing home right there on the lake, and you get to see what's happening all the time. Last weekend, I think it was, we kind of got a little bit of a release of the shelter in place. And I just would love to know sort of what your feedback was, what you saw, what was happening, and what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I moved to Oakland in 2004, and in fact, it's a little bit funny, but let me see. On this side, I can point right there, is a building called the Essex, and I moved there in 2004. When I saw the lake, I fell in love with the lake. I had already had a sweet spot in my heart for the East Bay, and I really think of Oakland as like the heart of the East Bay. I mean, it's got Berkeley, it's got a lot of other exciting, fascinating little communities, but Oakland is that deep, diverse heart of the East Bay, and the lake for me represents the natural manifestation of it. And so I've watched the lake evolve since before Measure DD passed. I think it actually passed right maybe as I was moving here. That was the $170 million bond measure that was subsequently leveraged to equate to about a $500 million investment in various projects around the lake over the last decade. And we watched the use of the lake evolve as well. You know, I consider myself a bit of a student of history, and the lake has a long and interesting one. And part of that is there was a period when it got really, really wild, really hot. I've seen a few videos online. There aren't that many because it was, pre everybody recording everything and everybody on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what helped that it was allowed to be a little bit more wild because people weren't as connected to it. Um, and certainly over the last several years, as the lake has become just more and more beautiful as a place to be, and maybe the weather's warmed up a little bit more due to whatever, global warming and other factors, it gets popping out there sometimes. And there is also a lot of pent up energy right now because people are trapped inside or, self quarantining, and being outside in the sun is something that is healthy and brings a lot of people a lot of energy. Now, I have noticed a change in the types of people and the flow of people around the lake. So before it was like either off or on. I for the most part have worked out of my home office for the life of the company, and so I'm constantly watching the lake. And during the day, there's not that many people out there. I might be one of the few people, just a few runners, a few people here and there. Whereas now there's more like a high, consistent level of people out there because it's the backyard to people who live in this neighborhood. You live in a tall building on the lake or a condo on the lake or even a lot of the homes around here, there's not a lot of space. Mm-hmm. And so it's the backyard for everybody who lives out here. In addition, there are those times, I'd say Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon. I was a little bit surprised that even out there right now, it already looks like it's brewing because, the weather has been amazing.
Yeah.
But we've been able to, and I say we, like everybody who comes down to the lake, for the most part, has been able to maintain a healthy balance. Now, I think that everybody would concur that trash around the lake, while not being our biggest societal problem by any measure, it's just like, are we really, we have to refight the battle of littering? Like, it's astonishing that we can't keep the lake a little cleaner. Because whether you unfortunately are an unhoused person in our community and have to live on the lake, or whether you live in one of the fancy tall buildings, you're all enjoying the same lake, and no one, I think, enjoys it more if there's trash everywhere. So it seems like we could do a better job kind of collectively around dealing with trash on just a cosmetic level. And that may seem too cosmetic, too superficial, but a little bit along the lines of like the broken glass theory of public safety. It creates this environment where people go, oh, cool, I can dump my trash here too, or I can do something else that's not good. Right. But obviously the biggest thing is dealing with our homeless, unhoused, housing affordability, inequality, writ large situation, because there's this little tennis courts right nearby, and I know that sounds kind of like frou-frou or something, but they're public tennis courts. No one really used them very much, but one time one of my dancer buddies and I, we decided we'd start playing tennis a little every once in a while, and we had some good games out there. Well, now it's a tent community. And there are a lot of senior communities around the lake, and I know that seniors don't always feel safe in environments where there's not sort of predictable, established community ties. There's people coming in who they don't know. But now they are their own community in some respect. Mm-hmm. And so unless we as a society step up to build housing or address it some other way, it's kind of, we're just trapped in a very challenging situation on the housing front right now.
Yeah. Well, these are huge topics. I mean, littering and homelessness and all of this stuff. This is huge stuff. And thank you so much for thinking about it and working on it and participating in it and doing something about it, because it takes people like you to make change happen. So thank you so much for doing that. I just kind of wanted to switch gears a little bit and pick up on what you had just mentioned, which is one of my favorite things, which is one of your dancing friends you mentioned. So I just wanted to talk a little bit, switch gears towards dance and salsa specifically. You are also the founder of Salsa by the Lake. Can you tell us a little bit about that group, please?
Sure. In 2007, we were already living here in our place on the lake, and we just got back from Cuba. And I looked out on the beautiful lake. It was around this time, actually, it might have been, March, April. It was springtime. Springtime in the Bay Area is just, things start to light back up, and you want to get out there. And I thought to myself, gosh, I'd love to go back to Cuba. And then I thought, why is it that we go elsewhere to do what we really love? And I looked down at the lakefront and I said, we have a malecón. The malecón is what they call, of course, the boardwalk, as you know, in Havana.
Yeah.
And it's out there and people are using it all the time. And there's people playing music and there's people dancing and there's people falling in love and there's people selling food and there's people just hanging out. And it fluctuates in response to nature. It's not like at 5 o'clock, I'm going down to the malecón, It's, hey, it's a nice day outside. Let's go check it out, see what's happening. And we said, we had already down in Southern California where my wife and I first met, we would occasionally pull up in my little Prius, little second generation Prius. We'd pull up alongside the beach, like the cliffs where my parents lived. And I would open up the doors and put on music, and just my wife, Mary, and I would dance outside just on our own, because there's something magical about dancing outside under the sun, by water, with the wind blowing through your hair, et cetera. And so we said, let's do Salsa by the Lake. And I grabbed a boombox, like an old school boombox filled up with D batteries. I think it took 8 D batteries to power this thing. And it was like CDs. And so we grabbed our big CD case, and we emailed, like 10 friends. We said, hey, we're going to go down to the lake and just try to find a spot. And we started walking toward, like heading out of our house toward like the Lakeshore Grand area, toward the columns, what's called the pergola. And of course, when we got to the pergola, this was before they had changed the configuration, where right now there is one street between the library and the pergola. There used to be, for some crazy reason, 2 streets. I don't know how they fit them in there, but there was like 2 streets. It was a bad idea, whoever conceived of that in the past. So anyways, but it was still the perfect place because it had what I call like that mix of stage and stage and thoroughfare, stage and flow. So it kind of feels like a place you might stop and dance or do a performance of some sort, but doing so doesn't prevent people from walking through or running through. So it kind of reaches that equilibrium status. And so we went down there and just started playing some music and got some friends together. And that was back in 2007. We have been going every year since then. So I guess that means we're supposed to be starting our 13th year right now. And the group has grown from 20 people I would send emails to I think we're at 7,500 people in Facebook, and like 1,000 people on Instagram. And I mean, it's small, honestly, in the scheme of, social media, but whereas people have wanted to have a schedule, like every second Saturday there'll be Salsa by the Lake, or every third Sunday there'll be Salsa by the Lake, I have held true to the original conception of it, that it is in response to the weather, the community. We have a couple co-organizers, shout out to Rick Washington and Alvaro Batista, and their partners, Cynthia and Kelly, because my wife and I really founded Salsa by the Lake, and they and their partners have been part of keeping it going, because it's not a one person thing. And now there's even like a kind of a community of core people who are always there to help it. One example of that is last year we had all of our equipment stolen out of my garage. Our garages were old and they broke them open, and I had developed this, what I thought was an ingenious, practical solution to how to get all the equipment has grown a lot over time. It used to be like one boombox, and then it was one big speaker, then it was 2 big speakers, now it's 2 speakers and a generator and a table and all this stuff. And last year I could fit it all into a cart that I could attach to my bike. And they broke open the garage and they took my bike and they got all the Salsa by the Lake equipment with it. But the good news of that was our community rallied, and in 24 hours, we'd raised the roughly $3,000 that it took to replace everything. And it was just an awesome statement of how committed people are to this thing that has zero, it's not about making money. It's just about getting together, sharing in public space, enjoying life. And the people that, as you've seen, who come out, it's like you get every age, you get every race, you get everything. And everyone's in it to sweat together, to smile together, to laugh together. It's probably one of the things that brings me the most joy. And even though people always come up and say, "Oh, thank you for doing Salsa by the Lake," I always tell them, and I absolutely believe this. The problem, if I didn't do Salsa by the Lake, I would just be out there dancing on my own, looking like a weirdo. So it's like, y'all give me cover.
Yeah.
Thank you for being out here, so I'm not the only weirdo out here dancing like a crazy guy.
Right. I love that. Well, I love Salsa by the Lake. I'm a little bit of a latecomer to it. I just joined in the last couple of years, but it was like, I just love it. And I look forward to it every time.
Yeah.
I think I was there for the wedding.
Yeah, that random wedding. Yeah.
That was really fun. That was really neat.
And every year, that's part of the beauty of the lake. Like, I have realized there's a group that reserves that area every year for the fall, I don't know, some fall like pagan thingy. I don't know. It happens. I know it because it happens. What's that?
Some festival or something? Pagan
Yeah,
festival?
I don't know if it's like, it's not the solstice, but it's something like that.
Okay.
And it happens around the time of my birthday. Because of course I would always try and figure out a way to do Salsa by the Lake around my birthday, my own little party. And like several years in a row, there ended up being a conflict and they had the space. But, we just moved that way. And, one of the things I didn't talk about on the lake that has been an issue is that it can get pretty noisy at times. And people think of like, big speakers and they think big noise. But truth is, you're more than 150, 200 feet away from us. You can't really hear anything. You can see that there's a gathering, but you don't really hear it. But there are other activities at other times of the day where you go, whoa, that is just too much noise for any neighborhood anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Well, so I've seen some videos and different things from China and different places about how they are now starting to dance again.
Yeah.
Which I know for all of us salseros, we're interested in getting back on the dance floor and reconnecting to each other and to the music and the whole experience. And the people in China were wearing the mask, but they were still doing it. What do you think our future of salsa, sorry, there's my dog, he wants to say hi. What do you think our future of salsa in the Bay Area will be?
That's tough. There's been some interesting like research thinking on it that I've seen. I mean, not elaborate, but the founder of Lindy by the Lake, she did some research into kind of after the Spanish flu, what happened to like in the Roaring '20s, the jazz community, Prohibition. There may have to be an element of things are going to be smaller. I've been wondering, does Salsa by the Lake move way back to its roots where it was almost more of like a real spontaneous, like guerrilla type thing where there's no 3 days of promotion and notice. It's just like, we're going down to do Salsa by the Lake right now. If you're lucky enough to kind of be in the area and have the energy or whatever, come on over. So to keep it smaller, because part of it is just the volume question. But that's just Salsa by the Lake. There may have to be more structure. And I'm not into that really, especially when it comes to dance, but I've already, because I am a little bit of a dance nerd, have already gone out to Salsa by the Lake and figured out if you could get people to dance within each of the cement squares that are out there, and dance kind of within their quarantined family unit or whatever, at least you could have, people could go out and do solo dance. We could do it and couples could dance together, families could dance together. You might have to have like a rotating pattern of people through the dance floor so that everybody got to dance. You couldn't kind of hoard the space. I don't know. I'm trying to brainstorm what it might look like. Gary, my dance teacher and friend who I mentioned, Gary Johnson, who's still one of the greatest teachers here in the Bay Area. He and I have talked about, could we dance around the lake? So a progressive dance where instead of walking, you're dancing to the music, and that way you're sort of maintaining distance from people. But then it's more like a carnival type, like collective dancing, where it's not couple slash group dancing. What other ideas have we batted around? I mean, those are some of them. And that's me thinking about Salsa by the Lake. In terms of club dancing, I could see that stuff going underground, honestly. You know, small parties where people are going to have to get their temperature checked before they go in and or sign some waiver. There's going to be a lot of legal stuff around it. That'll be like the option for the non-underground piece, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be some more underground piece. And then there's just like the house party thing. I mean, which is, I could see probably before I go back out, I was a pretty consistent once a week dancer. And, I had kind of my spots that I like to go to dance. I say before I am back to that, I'm going to be trying to organize little get-togethers in our house where it's just going to be like kind of by invite only to people we know. I don't know. Some people would say the partner dancing was already sort of ebbing a little bit. But, dance will never go away, and partner dance will never go away. Social dance won't go away. It's been part of humanity, probably predating other forms of written language and spoken language. Dance is so human, and it'll persevere in some form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think dancing is really important. I think especially for couples, it can be very romantic. It can kind of keep the passion alive for marriages. I'm a life coach, and I work with people and their relationships, and that's one of the main things I tell them. I advise them to do is to dance because it's so important to connect with each other. But we'll just have to see how everything continues.
I would add to that point, by the way, you may mention this to your people or have thought of this yourself, but it's not just about reconnecting with each other. It's about the fact that it gives you a way to connect with other people, but under like prescribed circumstances where you're not seen as, being unfaithful because it's dance. And I actually think that is probably a role that social dance has played throughout history. So
that's a very good point. It's a very, very good point. And just one more thing about dance is that it moves your energy. So if you're feeling stuck, if you're in a bad mood, I can't tell you, I don't get in bad moods very often, fortunately, but if I ever do feel stuck or unsettled or just not super happy, after I'm done dancing, I get a smile on my face the first second I start, and it doesn't come off until I leave. And even then it doesn't go. I think I fall asleep smiling, it makes me so happy, and it just moves your energy in a way that allows it to flow freely and just really support your health and wellness in so many different ways. So I really look forward to getting back to dancing, because I probably will be one of the ones wearing a mask and, hand sanitizer after every partner or whatever. But, we'll see.
Compromise.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I have one or two more questions for you. So just from like a personal standpoint, have you learned anything about yourself during this quarantine that surprised you, that you didn't know about yourself, that you're like, oh, I didn't know I did that, or I didn't know that was a strength or a weakness, or?
I wouldn't say something new necessarily. I have always probably been a bit of an old soul. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and as I mentioned, the experience with my father forced or inspired a crystallization of and a focus about what I wanted to do. I've been in a relationship a long time. I have found my passion in dance a long time ago, and I rarely entertain, and like now that I'm building a company, I have that focus. So I have like these big chunks of life pretty well defined. I would say that I have come to accept and embrace some of my, what I might say are my weaknesses, um, and see them less as weaknesses and more just as, character traits, and that I should, be aware of and mitigate as necessary, but not be hung up on and worried about, right? In a way, that might be something. I've definitely just been reminded of how important family is in my life. I'd already kind of committed to a very collective life with my family. Um, my mom lives next door. My in-laws live with us. Um, we're like a family compound. If I could convince my brother to move back from overseas, I'd welcome him living next door as well. But so we almost always have friends around. I try to connect to the neighborhood. Like, I'm a big believer that you build out from yourself to your family unit, and to your partnership, to your family unit, to your extended family, to your neighbors and friends. And um, so maybe just recognizing that next step is also really thinking more strategically about how I can contribute and engage in this society, right? I'm trying to build a business that can be stable and successful, but what other ways can I give back? In addition to donating to several causes to help feed people and even take in more extended family than I expected. I've been working with my wife, who's a nurse practitioner at La Clinica, to feed and help some of the families that they deal with, who have much greater challenges than I've ever imagined. And then even strategically, how can I work for groups out there that might be facing inordinate challenges, but do it on a pro bono basis? So we recently started working with, I think I can feel comfortable saying that we just started working with Fairyland, which is if you've never been to Fairyland, you probably even know what it is. Fairyland is like the inspiration for Walt Disney. It's based right over here in this area. Where is my hand? Won't show up because I don't have a green screen.
Here,
Yeah, in the green area.
Yeah.
The green area there is this amazing place where kids of all, like, young kids since 1950, they're in their 70th year, have just been inspired by joy and fun. It's this little secret kind of right in the backyard of Oakland. And so we're going to try and help them tell their story and figure out how can they adapt to this new world, and hopefully raise enough money to keep going for another 70 years. So.
Awesome. Well, I won't take any more of your time, Isaac, but thank you so much. I really appreciate talking with you and getting to know you better and hearing more about what you're doing with the Kos-Read group and Salsa by the Lake. And thank you so much just for your community involvement. I really appreciate what you said about starting with your nucleus and then kind of building out. That really resonated a lot with me, and I'm sure it will with a lot of other people. So thank you so much for your insights and your time. And I hope you have a great day and good luck with everything.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
I'll see you on the dance floor.
On the dance floor, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.